Yeah. And you figure if it was somebody who came in, I love our conversations about like professional skills and competencies and comfort and all of that. Our conversation from, was it last week or week before that, about not being a parent when you become a parenting educator, and what's that's like and everything. And so then, so now if we think about the first year parenting educator and, like that level of confidence, and then all, so much more that you learn on the job. So, yeah. So hi, if you're just joining us, we're sort of, so first, probably most important is that Wayzata is going to be looking for a sub for Naomi while she's on maternity leave. And fingers crossed, that person actually is a parenting educator and has a parenting education license, which then led us to the sort of random thought about if somebody subbed, and if they had like a long-term sub and they were, they had no parenting ed background, like, if you gave them a crash course, what would you want them to know or be able to do? Yeah. Sarah Fritsch, it's lovely to see you. It's just such a joy to see former faces return.
Oh my gosh, I love you guys. I miss you so much. We don't have class today. And I was sitting and doing billing and I was like, "Oh, it's Friday at noon. I wonder if they're on." And I was so excited because you are. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm excited that you're here. And Greta and Yuji and Kelly and Becca and Ellen in her car. Are you going home, honey? Are you going home from class?
I am going home from class. This is like my transition. Like, I'm done for the week. I'm heading home. I have my friends. It's great. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Well, I have a topic left over from last week where we were starting the conversation about parents and about sort of inclusivity, and especially if you have parents that are sort of returners and you've got new people, and so how do you mesh everybody together, or that parent that is the super monopolizer of the conversation. Yes, that was usually me. And so that you include everybody. I think those, Naomi, as you talk about the skills that you learn as a parenting educator, I think that these kinds of things fit into the master class of being a parenting educator or facilitating groups. The other topic actually came up this week in an email from somebody who is in the parent ed program now, but is also a practicing parenting educator about curriculum development and design, and this sort of tension around, you want to meet parents' needs, if they, in your beginning of semester sort of topic list and all of that, but you want to balance that as the semester goes by. And then kind of the third challenge of, as Naomi talked about, sort of that you don't want to teach something before people are ready for it. So it's also that sort of scope and sequencing. So those are two things that we could talk about today.
Just little things.
Yeah, just little. Yeah, I know. So we'll knock those out. We'll give you 2 minutes. We'll knock those out and then we can move on. But mostly because this is our group and this is our community, I wanted, and for those of you who are here today, didn't want to disregard, and Megan's got a dog. I'm sorry, I'm so like animal distracted. So I don't know if there's a term for that. It's a form of ADD, animal distraction disorder, probably. But, and what's this one's name?
I've got a question. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, Ellen, go ahead.
Oh, I can't see the dog. I'm driving. I'll keep the dog there. I'll be home in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
No, I've I'm wondering how you guys deal with negative parents. I have a mom and oh, everything is so negative. My kids are obnoxious, they're devils, they don't listen. And this is a very type A, very I think I might break up here, guys. Sorry. She's so negative and she brings the whole class down. How do you deal with the negative Nellies?
So can I, Ellen? So I have been really working on this, and I think not only I don't know because I deal a lot with teachers now too, that can be kind of like that, and so one of the things that I have been saying a lot, let's say to myself and to my teachers and to my parents is, oh, yep, your child did do that, or your child, oh, and I don't discount, even though I really want to, I don't discount what they say or what they talk about with the behaviors. But then I say, the only things we can really control is ourselves. So, what are things that we can do? What are things that we can do? Right. So, I keep going back to that and then giving them those steps, not discounting any of their gripes and whatever, but then moving it back to, but in reality, the only person's feelings, behaviors that we can control is ourselves, right? So I just keep going back to that.
I love that.
Yeah,
and
I love that.
Ellen, this is Sarah Hardy. I'm going to jump in and say that I have been this week. I used the opening question that might help with this, which is when are times, presuming there are, when are times in your family when you find levity, fun, when your children see you laugh? And then that's my opening question, and we talk about those times. And usually people can come up with something, hopefully. And then I talk about the reason for the question. So the reason for the question is twofold. In the interest of authoritative parenting, we want to have a high amount of warmth and fun and connection in our family. And all of the work that we do, whether it feels like work or not, in the service of fun is like money in the bank. When you do have to be serious and you do have to lay down the law or really set a hard limit, and also in the service of the balance, but it's also in the service of this feeling that like kids will have that. Usually when I'm with my folks, it's really fun. Like we actually have a really good time together. And as soon as we can get through this bump, we can get back to playing the game or doing the puzzle or getting on the walk or whatever it is, that the norm is light and fun. So it's about authoritative parenting, and it's also about mental health, because think of the times I ask them when you remember seeing your parents or your caregiver so calm and relaxed that they were laughing authentically and enjoying themselves, and how if things are good enough that your parent is laughing and enjoying themselves, it's got to feel really safe for the kid, for the family. And so I would say that the antidote to all that negativity might be stimulating thought around like, gosh, do we have any fun? Or am I like teaching my kids that adulthood sucks and you should never want to grow up because it's all work and no fun, So I
love that, Sarah.
Oh,
I love that because I don't think this mom has fun. And then she asked this week, we're thinking about having a third. How do you know? And I'm like, oh God, no, you don't really like the two you have, She just, everything is a chore, So this would be a really good thought for her. She's not a very happy person. She's just not. But the other people in the group are happy, and she's just really dragging us down, man. And I've had her before, but man, she's just killing this group.
I have a couple thoughts here too, for dealing with that negative parent. One of the things I say to my families a lot is that come from a place of curiosity versus judgment. Because if you come from a place of judgment, it tends to be really negative. And then I think we tend to pull out more punitive measures when we're coming from like judgment and negativity, versus if we come from curiosity, it tends to be very positive. And so we don't necessarily go down that road of negativity. The other thing that I talk a lot about is feelings, and feelings really only last 90 seconds. Now we know obviously in kids it can last longer than that, but for adults it lasts 90 seconds unless we attach a story to it. And I think that mama is adding a really negative story to her kids. And so those feelings that she's having are just lasting that much longer because she's attaching that story to it. And so I don't know how you can exactly incorporate that into the talk that you're doing, but I frequently just talk about the emotions 90 seconds, not attaching a story to it, and then just coming from a place of curiosity versus judgment.
Do you have something on that, Megan? I've never heard that before. Attaching the story to the feeling. Yeah, I'd love a resource on that. That's awesome.
Yep. I can find it and send it to you. I don't have it off the top of my head right now, but I will find it in all my stuff.
I never have anything off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Let me check my Google Drive.
That's right.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's right here.
I have another. Sorry, Ellen. No, I have another approach that sounds counterintuitive, but has been just amazing in my classes the last couple of weeks. Has anybody ever done the lesson called 3 lists? I think it's out of conscious discipline. I'm not really sure.
It's out of the experiential learning, the positive parenting, experiential learning.
It's totally that. Yes.
Yep,
and
I love
it's
that
one
one.
of my favorite lessons to teach. And it sounds counterintuitive because the whole first list, you make 3 lists together as a class, is everything that's challenging right now. So it sounds like this is going to be a negative Nancy fest. Everybody's throwing everything out there. What are the behavior challenges? What are the, but it's so powerful having everybody do that and having that not be the end of the lesson. That's the starting place. And then the second list they make is imagining their child as a young adult in their late 20s coming home to family dinner. What do you want them to be like? And then you make this whole long list of values and hopes and dreams you have for your kids. And then the third list you make together is how do we get from there to there? And there's a whole bunch of processing questions that go with it. I will totally send you the lesson. It is really powerful. Each class comes up with different things and it's really personal. And I type out the lists. We usually make them on either big paper on the wall or whiteboards, depending on the type of space I have. I keep them all. I type them up for each class. And then I like to review them again at the end of the year to just see where are you now? Is that list of challenges the same? Because I bet a few of the things have already changed. There's always going to be challenges, but it helps parents, number 1, vent freely and a safe place. Number 2, feel not alone, which is the main thing. We're all in this. But also that parent who feels super negative, woe is me, my life is so hard, also sees, guess what? So is everybody else's. And that can take just a little steam out of that negative energy. And plus the focus on the third list of how do we get from point A to point B helps them realize how many of those first things are developmental. And it's so how does that affect our discipline choices? Are we punishing them for being who they need to be right now? Or are we guiding them with discipline that helps them get to that adult we're hoping they become?
And Becca, I also love on that when parents complain about their kids being, sorry, my cat and dog are fighting. When parents complain about their child being really independent, or they are like, oh, he just won't let you, and I'm like, but listen.
Because that's one of the processing questions, right? It's what can you see between list 1 and list 2? Because so many times the things that they're hoping for their adult child are the things that are age appropriate expressions right now that are impossible to parent and make you pull your hair out. But that gives the parent perspective of, oh, right, I actually want my child to be strong-willed. I actually want my child to have a voice and be able to make decisions and all these things that might be challenging. So it can help just add a little perspective to the negative Nancy, because you're not shutting down the negative. That whole first list is getting real with what's hard right now. anyhow, I will, it's like, I'm trying to think of, I have like my own lesson plan that has the questions. I have to find the original source. So it's, so I'm like making sure you get the credit to the right place, but I will try to send that to everybody.
I think going on what you were just saying too, it's like having parents check in with their expectations, right? Is she expecting her child to be an adult? You know, it's that developmental piece that, you know, kind of got to go back and check in. What are you expecting? You're expecting them not to fight. You're expecting them to share all their toys. You know, it's not realistic. So, you know, kind of going back to, okay, this is really what they're supposed to be doing. Good news is your kids are having sibling rivalry or whatever the case may be that she's complaining about. You know, it's usually goes back to where they are in their development anyway. And I feel like that's happened a lot this year, even with teachers and kids coming in and they're just their expectations of where they should be and where they really are. And, you know, I'm getting a lot of frustration in that, you know, from teachers as well. But it goes back to, you know, what are we supposed to be expecting anyway, you know?
There was one semester before COVID that I just used the theme, and it's maybe not, I don't know how politically correct Curious George is, but I just used the theme in my PowerPoints of Curious George, like we're going to be just curious all semester, and just use that as a whole semester gig. And then everything we did, we go, how do we be curious about this? How do we be curious about this? Just, you know, I thought sometimes you can pull it over for a semester's time, something like that. Shelley, when you were talking about the realisticness, I think sometimes that parent feels they're being realistic and you're being idealistic. And so I think that's that balance that we're talking, that's that trick of finding out where that parent's coming from. Why are those negative things coming through, right? I think to be curious about that parent a little bit too is really important to find out, is it a negative Nelly because that's temperament? Or is there something environmental right now that's going on in their life? You know, so that's another thought as we move forward with our parents too.
Yeah, Greta, you know, as you were talking too, I was thinking the pattern of negativity, right? Of developing that outlook and looking underneath it and around just messages of self-care. And again, I love the conversation about, rather than targeting out at that individual and pulling that person aside, right? But everything that you all are talking about is they're just messages that are brought to the whole class as a community because they're beneficial to everybody, right? But also that idea about bringing it, then somebody doesn't feel stigmatized. And then also it does validate when you open it up and then that person can hear other people. And then part of those messages also around self-care, because my experience is that if somebody is feeling particularly negative, and especially around their children, that may represent almost like Becca with your first list, like that everything feels challenging, right? They're just very overwhelmed and it's just like they can't think of anything positive, or they can't see the upside, or they can't have positive expectations, or even think of anything on that end of the, you know, because they're not even sure they're going to survive their, you know, raising this kid. And so underneath that might be just a sense of overwhelm. And so bringing in those messages to everybody and then having that reinforced about that it's okay to take a break. It's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay, you know, your kids will be fine if you go out for the walk, you know, whatever it is, but just sort of getting at some of the root of the negativity that could represent overwhelm.
Awesome. Thanks. Because there's a lot of power in negative people, a lot of power. Thank you.
Ellen, do you find, so as we sort of spin off on that idea of power, do you find that this particular person's negativity infects other people, that it kind of shifts their own perspective towards the negative?
She's in a good group. There's a lot of positive people in that group. I mean, I'd say it's 50-50. It's a group of 8. And I would say of the 8, 5 of them are pretty good. And she's the most negative. And there's 2 other ones that are, you know, she kind of drags them down. It's just that her negativity is always, how do you get your kids to listen? How do you get your kids to do this? And it's, and it just takes a lot of time because I don't want to ignore her. And the other moms have really good ideas. They have her number. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're like, oh, here she comes. She's going to have something negative. They're really good with her. But it takes a lot of time. I guess the power that's being wielded, so to speak, is just really time consuming. So
maybe take the lead back on the class and don't offer joys and concerns 1 or 2 weeks.
Yep. I'm not going to do that next week. Yep. And I've done every other, but whenever I open with joys and concerns, it's boom, there's an issue right off the bat. And I try to spend time with her, and she's always frazzled when she comes in because she's just done preschool drop off. And she's just really, and I'm just like, no, you don't need any more babies. I don't like to say that, but really, her 2 stress her out. I can't imagine her having 3 or 4. So
I also really try to take time with those moms or parents or people on, if you can, like you said, she's coming in hot. If it's a little bit before class, even if you can, before parent group starts, like fill her bucket a little bit. I also think, like Susan's talking about, part of that too, self-care might be that she needs somebody to hear her. And I've noticed that with parents like that, if I get some of that out prior to our actual large group togetherness, they don't need as much from the rest of the group. They got a little bit of time with me.
I like that. And you could even say, like, so what's hard this week? Like, just what, just.
Sarah, can we just say, like, let's get your complaints out immediately so I can move on with my class? We could just say that.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I
Show
think
the road.
that,
Yeah.
I would do
Yeah,
it like
I know.
more gently and more privately, but
Yeah,
I mean,
kindly. Yeah.
just laugh
But-
about it a little. Like, okay, what you got this week?
Let's see.
One of the things kind of off that, Sarah, I agree with what you're saying. I had a mom who was depressed, was going through postpartum depression. She'd be in our class. She had been in our class for a year and still was suffering. And so just approaching her first, sometime before the class. But now she's finally kind of got some of that stuff. She's walked through it. I see her livening up in class and bringing herself forward, and conversation with her on the side. She's like, thank you for being patient with me. Like, just do that little personal thing on the side. But then now she's like showing up. She's kind of showing up as a frustrated parent, but she is still gracious, and she was thankful that it wasn't pushed. So you got to know your people, right? So there is that one that you approach at the door and say, oh my gosh, what's happening this week? And you can kind of go off of that and get it through. And then there's others that need that. And that's, I think, what you guys are all so good at. That's what I see here happening in this group. I hear you talking about it in your groups. I think we're surprised sometimes that we already got a lot of that down. It's just, we don't necessarily, at least some of us, like me, is more of a random, non-sequential person. I don't have it figured out in a form that I could hand somebody and say, here, this is how you do it. And I don't know, but we do. And I think it's pretty impressive. I'm impressed with you guys. So thanks for sharing all that stuff. I'm gonna log off.
I heard this, and I might have heard it from this group. It might have been in a tweet on Twitter. I don't know. I have so many information sources coming at me, but I heard this thing and I've been practicing it, and it is so empowering. Rather than saying I'm sorry, is to say thank you. And so, like what I said to there was a student who, so if you're late, rather than saying, I'm sorry that I'm late, I'm sorry that I'm late, is like walking in and going, thank you for being patient, right? And so it's like turning it on the person's behavior, which I love, because I'm sorry person, like, it's like always, and I'll take 5 minutes explaining why I'm sorry, and you're okay with this, right? Well, I am, and so it's just like, just not say that. and not diminish your value or your presence, like you're a human being, right? It happened, right? But to acknowledge what the impact was on the person and thank them for that, right? So the number of times this last week that I have thanked people for their patience, or there was a student who had shared something about her family, and it's one of those emails you intended to respond to, and then time went by, and then she said, "Did you get it?" And so rather than saying, "I'm sorry, that I hadn't responded," it was just like, "Thank you for your patience, thank you for, anyway." I just wanted to slip that in there based on what Greta was saying. It was, it's been a moment, it's been a bit of personal empowerment, and I found it to be really effective.
I love that. I love that. It goes a little bit along with my own. I have one where I don't say I forgot it, because by the time I say I forgot it, I've remembered it. So I say, "Oh, I remembered. Oh, look, I just remembered." Instead of, "Oh, I forgot. It's like, "Oh no, I just remembered." It's just so much more gracious to self, and it's moving forward instead of looking back, which is something I need to work on a lot. So I love that. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Another thing, Ellen, that I always do this time of the year is right before we have our break is I teach how to teach children gratitude. And you could bring in gratitude or kindness, teaching children to be kind. And I think in those lessons alone, the focus is not so much on you as what you give to other people, and that we're better when we're grateful, even if it's for one tiny little thing. And and I often, for my kindness lesson, I always ask parents to just tell one kind thing that someone did for them in the last week since we've met. And, it can be like at Hy-Vee, somebody opened the door for me. I mean, it can be very, very minimal, but to recognize that. And then I go back and say, "Okay, now tell me one kind thing you did for somebody else." And for a person that's negative a lot, I think just to take the focus off of, them and what they can do to make life better for someone else is a healthy distraction. And that puts us in a better place. And I think, the more that you give, the more you receive. And so I think, reaching out to others, and whether that's a neighbor or your own children or whatever, that might be a better lesson coming up for this mom.
Yeah, instead of joys and concerns, you could do a gratitude practice.
Forces them to think about something positive. Awesome. We can move on. I'm sure someone else has other questions and issues. So
sorry. I mean, I want to add one thing to this topic before we move on. Is that okay? Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Yuji. We'd like to hear it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my signal is not good. Sorry. I just so someone shared, a colleague shared, right? So she often helps the parents to ask themselves meaningful questions. One of the questions she always helps the parent to ask themselves is, what imagine like when your children became adult, what kind of what do you want your parent to describe you? How do you want your children to describe you? What kind of words you'd like to hear when they describe you? And so I make a list of that, and then look at then how what can you do, what can I do to be that kind of person? So maybe that can be helpful to help them to see, okay, I definitely don't want my children say, "Oh, my mom is so negative." No, most people would like to say, I want to see, to hear, my children say my mom is positive, is courage, right? So courageous. So that is, what I think might be helpful. Thank you.
And that's a great list to make and then leave up in the classroom. Like, here are the words that you'd like your kids to describe you, so I like that a lot.
Yeah, so then anytime you're coming up to something, you're saying, somebody brings up a question or a concern, something that's and something that's going on in their family. So, well, let's look at our list. What would it look like to be that parent in that situation, or this parent in this situation? Like, what would it look like to be gracious there, or what would it look like to be curious there? Or you could point to it and reference it all the time, which would then just I think that's brilliant, great idea.
In the book, 7 Habits of the Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey has this activity that I've done a couple times. It's sort of like that. I always put up a piece of paper and it's like, think about somebody in your life that has had a great influence on you. And then what characteristics did that person have? Why, what did they do to, have a positive effect on you? And then on the flip side, you do it like somebody that negatively affected you and what characteristics did that person have? And then you kind of go back to that positive list and say, this is who you want to be for your child. So it's just kind of pointing out, like, it's just exactly what you're saying, pointing out all those positive things that you want your child to say about you, or you want them to look at you in that way.
That idea of agency, right? That our parents feel they have agency within themselves, as well as we want them to know that their children have agency, kind of what you were talking about at the beginning, Sarah. Who's in control here? And somebody who's being challenged with their idea of they can control anything might be coming off negative, right? And maybe if they are empowered, I don't know, it's different for different people, but that I think that sense of agency for parents is so important, that I can do that. I can work at that, but I just need it broken down or help with it, or thanks for the idea. I hadn't really put it in that perspective before. Things like that can be said when you have all those examples that you were sharing, Shelley, you have that example, those ideas up.
I use that a lot, actually. We're just really into that social emotional part in a lot of my parent ed classes right now. And so we were talking about, because a lot, when I do their goal sheet, a lot of them are like, how, I'd like my child to have friends, or how do they make friends, or it's always about like sharing or taking turns or not being aggressive, all the social emotional business. And so I did like what you're talking about, Shelley, in the friendship aspect, though. I had them get into small groups then and talk about what are the qualities and skills. Think of one person that you think of as your friend, and then what skills or qualities does that person have that's why you call them your friend. And then they wrote them all down, and then we stuck them in the domains, right? We stuck them in the ESIPs. So we stuck them in the domains, and I'm like, look at all these skills that you need to have to be a friend. Now you're thinking your 24-month-old should be there, or your 36-month-old, you know what I mean? And I always think when you bring it back to like, what are the skills that, when you bring it back to them, like you're saying, it really helps. It really does help.
That's a fantastic approach for any complex skill, right? That parents are expecting too much of kids around, to break it down into like, oh, okay, let's make a list of all the things and plug those into the ESIPs and see if that's developmentally reasonable and appropriate. Sort of.
I went to Orono had a training a couple of years ago, and they brought Michael Huber in from St. David's, and he did a really good, like, talking about social emotional development in general. And he like had this whole scenario that's a very like real thing that parents can put themselves into the situation. And I've used that in all of my social emotional lessons, because I'm just like, okay, let's think about what would happen if this happened. How would you react as an adult? How do you calm yourself down? How did you learn to calm yourself down? And then I just simply at the end of it, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to say a statement out loud, and I want you to answer in your head. I am blank years old and I have blank years of experience learning to calm myself down. Now put your child's age in there. Like, do you see the discrepancy? I think sometimes parents just need you to like break it down, or it's like, we're expecting too much.
There've been some groups through time where there's lots of comfort. We've been together for a while. The phrase that comes up is, so who's the adult here? So who's the adult here? And what does an adult need to do here? We just kind of laugh and we kind of, it just brings it back to, oh yeah, that's right. Okay. And yeah, bring some levity as well as perspective in levity and perspective, right, Ellen?
So I want to do a quick check-in with Ellen. Since Ellen, you raised this question and it was focused on a particular parent, but I think we've all had parents and learners that feel challenged and it's hard for them to boost out of that perspective. So I just want to do a quick check-in with you on, we have a lot of input and ideas and things that we're all learning from. Does this get to your question for the parent?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Lots of strategies and tips and things to remember. And oh yeah, for sure. And it took us 41 minutes, you guys. Good grief. Let's move on.
Yeah,
Ellen,
but
and
can I say,
that was good stuff. That was good stuff for all of us. We liked it.
We
Don't
got lots
time
of
us
ideas.
do not time us on our genius.
Genius has no timeline.
well, and it indicates that we need time to process, and that's why we're here. And we're looking for other people to process with us, because how many of you have somebody in your program that you can spend time like this with and process like this? I do not. If you do, you're fortunate and blessed. Really, honestly, yeah.
No, thanks, you guys. You're
nice. This is nice. So don't apologize.
You're all brilliant.
Thank you for processing this. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Somebody else bring something else up so that we get to another difficult situation.
Sir, I have a quick question for Susan. Susan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I heard you help develop an online parenting curriculum. Is that true?
No.
No?
Rumor. So I do a lot online, but not, when you say online parenting curriculum, do you mean a curriculum to help parents understand online stuff in their kids? Or do you mean like a delivery of parenting education that that can be delivered online? Like, because there's a whole lot of stuff about transferring in-person curriculum to online learning, like for divorce education and stuff like that. Or are you talking about Parentopia, like the social learning platform that we developed with ECFE?
No, it's not the Parentopia. I know the Parentopia. I just, last week I heard you develop a curriculum. I was excited. I said, oh, I want to check it out. Okay, now I know it's not, it's not, correct information. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know.
Sure, thank you for your understanding that I couldn't meet your need. So. Rather than saying that I'm sorry. Is there anything else related to parents and power and challenging parents or challenging learner situations? Because rather than move to a completely different topic like curriculum development, which we certainly can do, let's continue talking about challenging parent-learner situations. How about inclusivity? So let me just ask you, so you've had a standing group of parents who have come to your classes over, could be 1 year, could be over several years. Maybe they're a little cliquey, and that brings them joy to see this familiar faces. And then you have new parents that join. How do you help those new parents feel part of that sort of existing community, especially a community that has kind of this tight knot of a few people that are very familiar with each other?
I do small groups a lot. I start small and then work my way up. So make sure they get into small groups and make sure that my cliquey friends are not all together.
So you break up the clique?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So then
I will assign
yep. And
people
if I
in
know
groups.
and I yep, sign people groups. And so if I know, and then if I know, like, I know my people and I hope that I know a little bit about that new person, you know, I try to get to know a little bit about, and then I will purposely put them with somebody that's, you know, like them, like has some type of same, maybe the same age kiddo, or maybe, you know, something little that I can, anything that I can find. So yeah.
I flat out tell the clicky group, I'm like, hey guys, I know you've known each other for a while, but it's really important that you make these other families feel welcome. And I had a group, and it was 5 moms, and they'd been together for years, and it was so painfully obvious. And so I sent them an email because I was comfortable with them. I had that relationship with them, and I said, hi mamas, you know, I know you love each other and you've been together, but I'm definitely noticing, like, you know, and they all responded. They're like, oh my gosh, we hadn't really even thought about it. We're so sorry. And the next week they came in and they were like, you know, it was like 2 or 3 weeks into the session. I just called it out. And Kelly, I just answered you, like, I just call it out anymore. I know. And it took me several years. So Kelly said, how do you have the parents get off topic a lot? And I was like, that's a great, you know, that's really fun, but it's not about our conversation today. And I want to say it took me maybe 4 years to finally be like, you know what, that's not, or I will stop conversation and be like, oh, hang on, there's something going on over here. And are you guys done? Or do you want to share with the group? So yeah, it takes a while to get that confidence. And the first time I did it, my heart was racing and I broke out in a sweat, but that's our job as facilitators. So, but yeah, just calling it out what it is and saying, hey, I really need you guys to, you know, you'll get there, Kelly.
And if you
Kelly, can I ask a question? When you say how that parents are getting off topic, what does that mean to you? What is that? What is it looking like? No, put it in the chat. Put it in the chat.
Okay.
Live transcript might pick it up too.
Please don't use live translate because we will lose all the record of our chat if we use that.
We do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that happened in the previous. So when Susan updated the record, it was not record. It's all the live, you know, live translate.
Well, I can save the chat. If I just click save chat, I can save it. So click save chat before it ends and then you can get it. So. Oh, Kelly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Their house. Oh yeah. Yep. Yep.
You know what I've done over the years, if I don't want to call out anybody, I will just kind of sit back and I say, okay, I need to earn my salary a little bit here, so I'm going to bring us back in. You know, I've done it on me. I've done it about me, and then it seems like I'm not, you know. And I've used that several times. Okay, I've got to earn my pay.
I love that.
Right into something.
Because you know what, when there's one parent who's talking about their home reno project, there are probably 3 or 4 other parents who are feeling kind of awkward and uncomfortable. It's like, when are we going to get to parenting? So you're doing them a huge favor by taking that on yourself and just saying, hey, okay, let me earn my salary. I love that turn of phrase. I have a parent who's kind of a combination of of Ellen's negative Nancy and the welcoming a new person in. I think I mentioned in a different week that I have several parents going through trauma or crisis right now, which is a new experience for me. And this is a grandma who's got temporary custody of her grandson while there's a horrible custody thing going on with an abusive parent and a parent who's out of state. And they're actually living in a homeless shelter right now. And they were referred by our amazing social worker to ECFE. And on one hand, I've been so moved and touched by her willingness to be vulnerable and share. Like, this is really hard stuff that she and her family are going through right now. On the other hand, when she's there, it's probably 15 minutes, at least 10 minutes of some new horrible thing at the beginning of class when we have joys and concerns, or even if I'm just checking in, how are people doing this week, like just a little thing. And I want to still be that safe place for her to share when she doesn't have other places. Sarah just asked if there's home visiting available. I've never done home visiting and I don't know if our district does it. I'm guessing that we must. But I have no idea about it. And the whole she's in a shelter thing, I think, has been like, even having space, a challenge. Anyhow, so wanting to not have her completely dominate class, but also supporting her and not be therapy for her, but hearing her and giving her a safe place. So I'm just like, this is a new balance for me. And I know a lot of you have probably had to do this kind of thing before, but it's new for me.
So part of my teaching contract is I teach parenting at a homeless shelter in Egan. And
awesome.
We've always thought about having, trying to get them over for ECFE classes, but I have the same concern of, how are they what they're dealing with is just so night and day from what our typical ECFE classes are dealing with,
Right.
which doesn't seem equitable, right? Like they should just be in there and be able to feel safe in there, but literally their backgrounds and what they've lived with is typical families can't understand. I mean, I've been there 5 years. It's taken me 5 years to, really get a pulse on. You have no idea because your whole life has been chaos, and trauma. And and I do a group over there, and the group gets kind of, whose story is worse than the other story. And so, I don't have an answer for you except for that it's just learning every week for me. It for sure is. And just validating and remembering what they've been through, and that is why they're homeless and that is why they're in the situation that they're in. But it's kind of just being patient, but putting them in a typical ECFE class, I think is a really big challenge.
I think so too. And I think they deserve a one-on-one.
Absolutely. And I have started doing one-on-ones over there in the last year and a half because the group was, even doing a typical parenting group over there was really difficult because they were always trying to one-up each other on things. And it many times got out of my control. The one-on-ones do seem to go better. I think home visiting would be great for them, but you also want to build a community for her too, right?
Right. And the truth is, this is a really small class. So I actually really appreciate that she and her grandson are in it, because tiny class and, any added voice is helpful. And I feel like the other parents have been welcoming. So that part hasn't been an issue. I can see the trajectory of it potentially being her completely dominating with these really hard things and wanting to give some space, but not our whole class space to that. I wrote down, figure out home visiting. So I'll connect with other people in the district and see what we offer and what resources we have for her.
Well,
or even
and
meeting
Becca,
with her one-on-one before or after class, maybe making a space in the building that you could visit with her if you can't home visit.
Yeah.
And Becca, it's not there. You don't have to have a home visiting program. There is money. And so even if you do call it, like when I do a home visit or a parent call or whatever, I just mark it on my timesheet as a home visit, and then it comes out of a different pot of money. So, and you don't have to have a program to make a one-on-one parent call. Yeah, parent coaching. That's what I've changed mine to. I've changed it from home visiting to parent coaching.
That's what we have too, even though sometimes we go into their homes, it's still
Mhm.
titled parent coaching instead of home visiting.
I do parent coaching, and then that can be anything from in the home to Zoom to if they come in.
Thanks all.
Becca, I'm wondering if you'd be able to sort of meet grandma at the door and just say, I'm just curious. It'd be nice if you could kind of screen and be like, what big thing is coming up today? And you could almost just say, I want you to feel safe, but I think some things might just be too big. Some of the things happening for you, these other families just don't understand. And so they kind of give that blank look. It'd just be kind of nice if you could kind of screen, like, what would you like to talk about in group today? And then if she brings it up, you can say, ooh, that's really big. Why don't you and I meet later?
Yeah.
Gonna do a pre-screen. I don't know if you can do that, because sometimes you pre-screen with the parent. Sometimes you'll pre-screen and you'll be like, how was your week? And they're like, it's fine. And then they drop a bomb on you in the class, like kind of like for that Shelley, that shock and awe, like one-upping. But maybe if you could do some sort of I feel like that's a big topic for our families. Why don't we talk about that later? I don't know, just an idea.
I try to make sure I do this with all my parents, but we start out on the playground, and I try to get each parent one-on-one to check in with them, not in the big group. And that's been helpful. So just getting her a chance to check in with me personally. And then what I'm trying to do during big group is to turn the focus on to what's going on in her little guy's life. So it's not the whole big picture, because that's just overwhelming and too much. Thank you.
A great question, Becca. Thank you. Well, can I just say that this has been, I think, one of the most focused, not that the other ones aren't, but I mean, like, topic focused, in depth, based on our experienced, caring, supportive, community building discussions on a very, very challenging topic that I don't even know how we would teach that in parent ed. I mean, in our U of M program, like that, because in a way that would be anything more. It's almost like my teaching parenting to my undergraduates. That it's like a concept for them that is just like, yeah, I guess I can relate to that and that kind of thing. But it's, of course, more meaningful as they move through life and have other, real parenting experiences or whatever. Anyway, thank you all. This has been such an amazing, in-depth conversation. I have been thrilled at seeing the number of people who watch our videos. Not that we're going viral or anything like that. But I'll look at the YouTube Create Studio thingy that has like your videos, and we have somewhere between like 10 and 35 views of our discussions. And so know that they're not contained just in our 1 hour time slot, but they really are continuing to be beneficial, especially some of you who, like Shelley, we were able to join us today, and Sarah, and I know that that's been a challenge otherwise. So, so it thrills me to see that our discussions are shared and other people can see them. But yeah, what a fabulous conversation, you guys. I have learned so much I always do, but I've learned so much from all of you today. and your experiences. Oh, what's that, Greta, with your sticky notes?
I just wanted to say, here's your ideas. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I almost wonder if, and I know this is like what's the board? Is it Padlet, Ellen? Where, you know, if for some of these, if maybe we get a Padlet going sort of simultaneous, that we could just as we're, you know, sort of rapid fire with, and this is what I do, and this is, or here's a phrase or something like that, and have a Padlet that is sort of topic focused. And then it would give us the thing to come back to too. That wouldn't be hard to do. And the one of the things that I love about Zoom is that it's an app. And so I can make the window smaller and do other things if I'm in a really boring meeting. I never do that with this group, but because something like Padlet is also like a separate screen, it would not be that hard for us to have that open. You know, it's not like toggling through two, like you close down a window and open another window. And so
I'm gonna put it in the chat. I have just a random one that I opened. See if that works. See if you can click on that. It's just one that I haven't used yet.
Yeah.
So you can ignore that it says Tuesday ECFE, but I'm just curious if that would work, and then we can open that up for next week.
Yeah. And so yeah, like I can see both. You know, like I can, if you, especially if you make your screen smaller, you know, then you can see both things at the same time or toggle over. Yeah, we could try that. So cool. Yes, it is very cool, Becca. One of the ways that I'm using it this week is I had a speaker and his kids come to my undergrad class. And so I asked the students to go on to Padlet and to write thank you notes. And then I have a single, and it's more creative, and students can put in pictures, or they can put in links, or they can put in memes, or they can do whatever. And then it's kind of like a nice group thank you card. So it's nice to be creative. So yeah, great. Well, everyone, I think we'll wrap up for today. And thank you again for this fabulous conversation. I hope to see you all back next week. I will put a note in on the 19th. I can't be here, I'm traveling. And so if one of you stalwart returners can facilitate and videotape the thing, that'd be greatly appreciated, but that's not for another few weeks. So next week for sure. And what is next week? Next week is what, the 12th? So we'll see you then. Yeah. Bye, everyone.